Welcome to Are You Real, episode 47 with Kasey Fuller.
Welcome to Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You, the podcast that focuses on Christians that are active in everyday life. Join in as we speak to everyone from successful business owners to educators to athletes about their faith and how it helps them reach out and revolutionize those around them to do the same. And now get ready to roar with your host, the voice of manifestation, John Fuller.
Hey guys, before we get started today, I want to thank you guys for the shout out on iTunes. Real quick, I want to read Danny Sunshine Bauer. Hopefully I read that right. And Danny says this show reminds him of John Etheridge's Wild at Heart. If you're looking for a show that is authentic and focused on Christ, this is for you. And also Future Speaker 00. Hopefully I can talk right today. Absolutely amazing content, my favorite podcast. I love the authenticity of the speakers, people who love God and know how to keep it real. So guys, today is definitely going to be my first time ever down in the dungeon of the basement of the office. Right at you with Are You Real? I have my amazing wife who is going to be doing an interview with me. We have been talking about doing this for over 3 months. Maybe even 4, actually. Finally going to make this happen. So, Kasey, are you ready to do this?
Absolutely.
Are you ready to roar?
Let's do it.
All right. Kasey Fuller is a certified personal trainer and the founder of FullerLifeandFitness.com. She loves to help people succeed in reaching their fitness goals through their online training, one-on-one coaching, and recently just launched a new program on her site which goes into great depth to help her clients really personalize their program to their specific needs. Kasey is a figure competitor and placed second a few years ago in the Alamo Showdown and is planning to compete again this year in June. Last October, Kasey and a group of ladies, some of which I've had the pleasure of interviewing on my show, launched the first ever Roar Women's Conference in Amarillo, Texas. Kasey was a speaker at this event and also led worship. She is passionate about leading worship and has done so for over 15 years. She loves leading others into the presence of God and allowing them to experience a deeper connection with the Father through worship. Kasey says her life's biggest blessing is her family. She has an amazing husband, John, that's me, who met over almost 18 years ago. Together they have 3 beautiful children. All right, Kasey, barely jumped into what you do and who you are. So let's go in a little bit more depth about what you do.
Awesome.
Okay, so tell us about you.
So you touched a little bit on my personal training, and I love doing that. I do one-on-one training. I have clients that I train weekly, and I also have an online program. I've been online training clients for about a year now. I have an online Facebook closed group that I've used for a lot of different things, but this is kind of a new adventure for us. We have gone into this new program that you talked a little bit about, but it's just a super cool program because what it does is it allows our clients to go in and really personalize their one-on-one needs. So, for example, one of the things that I think is just so cool about it, you can just go on there and say, I think it's time for me to get my blood work done. And you can send in for a test, get that information back, and then from there, you can get those results back from the company downloaded onto your own personalized program. And from there, you can structure everything around your own personal, even blood work that has been done. So that part's really cool. Of course, there's over 1,500 recipes in there. There's nutrition, grocery lists, workouts. And the cool thing is it's a compilation of a lot of trainers. So I go in and I can tweak things and change things and take out things I dislike, but I can also pull from a lot of really qualified, great trainers that have good products and have a different maybe expertise or experience than I have. So it kind of makes it just a really neat program for online trainers. So I've got
Awesome.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go. You did real quick though, because we got a lot to cover, but even worship, you talked about doing worship for 15 years. Is that just a hobby or something you love to do? Or obviously you said you're passionate about, so what does that look like for you?
So I've gone through different seasons of that. I, at one point, was on staff at a large church and was able to grow a lot in my skill. And I have been a assistant worship leader at one point. And at this point, I'm really just serving at our local church with having a family and having 3 children, one of whom is 12, about to turn 13, which will make us parents of 3 teenagers. It has been a pretty busy season. So I lead at least once, maybe twice a month right now, or co-lead with our worship leader, and love doing that. And like you said, we had our event in October, and I don't think that the Roar event was a one-time thing, and I do feel like the Lord is going to do a whole lot more with this group of women and with each of our callings. And that was the first time that I was able to speak at an event, and surprisingly, the Lord had been preparing me for that for quite a while, because that's how I work. He has to very slowly prepare my heart for that, but it was a very cool experience, and I realized that was just the beginning of something that God is doing.
That was cool. What did you, if I remember right, what was there, like 100 or 125 people there-ish, somewhere in there? So there's quite a few.
We capped it out at 100. We wanted it to feel personalized, and what we were able to do with 100 women, now of course that wasn't including like the workers, and we served a big meal, and we really felt that these women needed to come in and be loved on and be ministered to, and so we felt like if we expanded it too large, it would take away some of the intimacy of it, but we do feel like there's going to be many more of them, because as we got going, we sold out in the first, I think, week, all of our tickets. Yeah. So we had a waiting list, and we've had people, wondering when we're going to do the next one, and even the women that came to this one, what's next? And so that's kind of what we're doing right now, is kind of exploring that what's next season for the Roar event.
Okay, exciting. What has been an inspirational scripture or success quote for you?
I have so many.
You can't give me a whole bunch. You gotta give me just 1 or 2.
All right. Well, I'll give you the one that has been my life verse, and that is Proverbs 3:5-6. And it's, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. And I feel like continually throughout my life, it's kind of interesting that I happen to be a planner, and the verse that the Lord continually gives me is trust in me, because I tend to want to know every detail of every scenario, of every situation, so I can prepare and plan.
I'm laughing right now. I'm trying not to say anything, so that's pretty funny. For those of you who don't know us, we are complete polar opposites. So I'm a little bit fly by the seat of your pants sometimes, and a little spontaneous, and Kasey likes to plan. So it can make for an interesting time sometimes, which is fun. Kasey, I want to go into your journey, specifically going into fitness, and obviously because we talk about purpose and how you found your purpose. What got you into fitness training? What made you decide to do it? And what did that look like?
Well, for me, it was something that I've known that I wanted to do for a very long time. I've always been into sports and excelled in track. I was a state champion hurdler in the 100s and the 300s, and our 4x1 relay, and placed 6th at nationals in the 400-meter hurdles. I mean, track has just always been something that I enjoyed. And when I got pregnant with our third child, Kalora, she's 12 now, I actually started the process of getting my personal training certification and doing all of that, but the Lord kind of had different plans at that time, so I kind of just put it off. And then it just happened to be, everything came together in God's perfect timing. I think it's been about 4 years now that all the doors just opened up, and I was able to step in and learn the skill of what it takes to take somebody who knows nothing and help them learn how to properly have their training, their nutrition, and all the things that they need, the tools that they need, come together to help them be successful. But along with that, one of the biggest things that I've learned through doing it and through experience, like you talked about, I'm passionate too about people finding out who they are. And so that definitely, it takes some work. So it's not just let's go to the gym and meet a couple times a week. There's so much more that goes into that. And so the longer I do this, the more I realize that that's one of the most important factors for people's success.
Yeah. So just to recap on that real quick, but I want to say, so you were passionate about it first. You knew you had it. You didn't have the skill to start with. Obviously, you had the skill with track. And then, so you took your passion, went and got your certification, started coaching. You've been obviously doing this now for several years, but then you got your skill. So, and I'm saying that for listeners to say, hey, I'm passionate about this, but I don't have quite the skill yet. So you knew you had the passion, you went and got the skill, and then you put those two together, and obviously that's where you've been able to create your business.
Right.
Right? Okay. So that's awesome. What has been, well, we've kind of talked about a little bit of the journey as far as that. I want to ask you, maybe, I want to go a little deeper for our listeners with you. So what was like maybe an experience that happened in your life or something that took place that kind of made you go after fitness or track or those things? Just something where we call it that digging deep moment where it pushed you, where you felt like you were pushed into to go after your passion.
That's a good question. Probably just entering into the season that I was entering in and knowing it wasn't maybe so much like a pushing, but it was more of God tends to work with me in seasons. And it was more of a time that I felt like he gave me permission and he was opening the right doors at the right time so the opportunities presented themselves. And so basically what happened was our kids were all off to school and kind of living their own life. And I knew it was time for me to, look for a job. And so I just got positioned at the right time where they needed somebody to do this. And it was perfect timing. And it was something that I'd always wanted to do. And was able to have a really good mentor to teach me some things and just kind of positioned me just right.
Okay. I want to ask, for the sake of, you've talked about a little bit of a lot of awards, so I know this, and you talked a little bit about it as far as, I know you've won state like 6 or 7 different times with summer track, and then nationals competitively, and figure you took second. You've done really well. But what would you say for our listeners, what was probably the hardest thing you've gone through in your life? And not just that, but how did God help you overcome that? Like, what was the light on the other side of the tunnel going through that? And what did you, looking back now, what would you say that God did for you?
I would say there's not one particular moment in my life that's the hardest thing I've ever been through, but I would say that I have a lot of life experiences that have shaped me into who I am. Thinking about maybe one difficult thing that I was able to kind of talk about when I spoke at the women's conference. I have a mom who passed away. It's been 4 years now. And her health was really bad for a long time. And she was manic depressive and schizoaffective. And so growing up, I really was the mother figure in the home with my younger siblings. And so as we got older, the Lord really, he repaired our relationship to the healthiest and best it was ever going to be. And I remember praying and asking the Lord when it was about the time we first got married. And I asked the Lord to restore my relationship with my mom to the best that he could, because that's really when I had committed my life to the Lord and wanted to walk with him and wanted to have that relationship restored. And so he did that, and she was at the healthiest place that she could possibly have been in. The difficult part was walking that road with her for the next years as she declined in health. And I feel like, looking back on that time, it was a good time knowing that God restores and he heals and he's able to just do so much that unexpectedly that we don't expect in our relationships and in our lives and in the way that he heals us and walks us through things. But also, it also propelled me into what I do and what I'm passionate about now, because I definitely feel a calling to help other people live their best life and to be healthy and to, allow themselves to position themselves in the things in their life that need to be positioned.
I want to cut you off real quick because I was thinking this. Most people would think, okay, so when you say healthy, I think most people think obviously food. I do, to be honest. So, but that's not what you mean though, because you're not talking about just physical health because of going back with your mom and what you went through. You're talking about overall health, right? You're talking about mentally, emotionally, physically, like that. What Fuller, obviously it's our last name Fuller, but it's literally Fuller Fit, hitting all aspects of spirituality, physical, and food, just the whole bit, right?
Right. So, we are created spirit, soul, and body. And in order for us to operate in our best selves, we have to be whole, we have to be healthy, we have to be healed in all areas of our life. We can't be a healthy person and only be physically healthy.
Right.
And a lot of times, you talk to people and they'll say, well, I've lost 100 pounds. But I don't see it. I look in the mirror and I still see that person that was 100 pounds overweight. And the problem with that is they've done all the work. They've gone through the motions to lose that 100 pounds, but they've done no mental preparation. Their mind hasn't gone with them. And so they're still seeing themselves and experiencing life through an unhealthy filter.
Right. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I wanted to hit on that because I think a lot of people need to realize that there's a lot of avenues to get healthy. And a lot of times we can get, and to be honest with you, some people are going to say this is rude, but like take pastors. I can't tell you how many pastors that I've met who are like spiritual superstars that are just like, know the word of that, but they're just severely overweight and not healthy, and they look like crap, to be honest. And I know that's not nice, and that's not something you would say, but that's just the truth. And the thing is people need to be, and I'm not talking about like fitness type fit. That's obviously, that's some people's just passion, but at least staying healthy and not being overweight, not having high blood pressure and all those things to function where they're supposed to. So,
yeah, and that, one of the things that I think it's 2 Corinthians 4, maybe, I'm pretty sure, it talks about our body being a temple. And so we have to recognize that as Christians, we really are called to be some of the healthiest people on earth because we have our mind, soul, and body are renewed to be like Christ, and our body is a temple. So therefore, we have everything we need to be the healthiest people on earth.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay, so what was a moment, you already hit on it a little bit as far as about coming into what you do, but did you have like a moment where you realized, or have you had one of those aha moments where you're like, this is what I was created to do, this is what I want to do, where you kind of saw your skill and your passion meet and like you had this like super excited moment or experience?
I don't know if God doesn't deal with me on the aha moments like that. I can tell you that, just like anything, there's days when, I still ask God, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing?
Okay.
And He's continually affirming that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay, I'm going to hit you on that one because the last interview I did, the guy said that, and I was really thankful because he was bluntly honest. So you just made the comment that you said, sometimes I ask God, am I where I'm supposed to? My question is why? Because I know you're really good at what you do because I hear the testimonies and the stuff that people put online. You're great at what you do. You're passionate about it. I guess my question to you or to anybody who is at the level that you're at that's good at what they do, why do you second guess yourself?
I think that anytime, we get going in something, it's like I said, God deals with me in seasons. And so for me, one of the things that I'm doing right now, for example, in this season, is I'm doing figure competitive. So basically bodybuilding, which is, in my experience so far, which, mind you, I haven't done every sport in the world or anything like that, but I have been an athlete. And it is one of the most difficult sports physically that I've ever done. But on top of that, it's also a very kind of dark industry where there's a lot of, worldliness in it. And so, I do have to continually check my heart and continually ask God and make sure that I'm on the right path and doing what He's called me to do. This is one of those areas I feel like for me, where every time I ask, I get a yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And He has called me to this kind of dark place. And you know me, and so you can attest to this. But I'm not the type of person that really likes the limelight. I'm not the type of person that really wants to get up on stage. And so even overcoming that has been a big stretch for me. But I clearly know that when the Lord speaks something, He has a purpose for it. And so that's one of the things that I've just kind of been questioning and asking God. But, for this season, it's a yes.
Yeah. What's funny is when you talk about being in a dark place, what the imagery that I had of that is when Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, and I say that a lot, I use that analogy a lot, but he has his staff and he hits it and it lights up and they're walking through that really dark cave. And I think a lot of times, so many Christians, I think we went through this when we were younger, like you almost exclude yourself from the world because you're like, oh, I just don't want to be a part of that. Well, really, in fact, I believe at a younger age, like, yeah, God nurtures us and He protects us. But at some point, we got to leave the mother's womb and we got to go out into the world and we got to be the light. And obviously, we're way past that point as far as being nurtured and being mature. But at some point, you have to grow up and you can't be sheltered. You have to go. We need to be that light in that really dark places. Obviously, that's where God's called you and not me. So thank God for that. Kasey, I want to ask you, what do you feel like your biggest strength and gifting is in the area of what you do?
My biggest strength is probably the fact that I'm willing to really push my clients to go into all areas of their fitness and not just look at it as a one session type thing, but more than that, to expand that. And so what I like to do with them is challenge them and give them journal exercises and give them things to do in between and help them learn proper nutrition. And one of the things that, I tell my clients from the very beginning is, if you're going to commit to me, then I'm going to commit to you. But if you're just coming and thinking this is going to magically happen, then you have the wrong attitude, because this is a whole lifestyle change. Everything has to change, from the way you think to the way that you eat to the way that you look at exercise. You have to be willing to come in and learn what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so I really like to challenge them and push them, but I also expect a lot from them because I feel like I give a lot.
So I think from hearing you, I would say you're a good teacher, motivator. You're very committed. Some of your gifts. And the reason I'm saying that is I want to ask you, within those, what do you feel like your biggest weakness is in possibly your gifting or talents?
My biggest weakness would probably be the fact that I can give too much sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
And in that, you set yourself up sometimes to be hurt.
Yeah, you get taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a great answer. And I want to say, what have you done to overcome that, though? Because I think there is a lot of people that are givers that constantly give, and then they just get hurt, and then they either just get burnt out or they become bitter. So how have you battled that in the sense of drawing boundaries?
Yeah, so that's the key word. I've really had to learn boundaries and learning, when to say no or when to put myself first. One of the hardest things is when you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with their schedules and your schedules and their life and your life. And so from the very beginning, one of the challenges is, people ask me this sometimes, when do you work out? And the answer is, I schedule myself. And so I've learned that if I don't schedule myself, then I'm not taking care of myself. And so I have to just set those boundaries from the beginning and really try to stick to it. And, obviously there's always exceptions to everything, but I really try to schedule myself, schedule my family, and then from there work everything in.
Okay. I really agree with that. So we do have to make time for ourselves. What is the biggest thing right now that you feel like God's stirring inside of you?
Well, there's this quote, and the quote is, everything that you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
I've never heard that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I've never heard that.
Yes, and that is one of the quotes that the Lord constantly gives me right now, because going into this competition in June is pretty intimidating to me. You just question yourself a lot, and there's a lot of mental game that goes into being able to step up on stage and be a competitor in the bodybuilding world. So my ultimate goal would be to get my pro card in figure. And that definitely is a big leap for me, but it is a goal that I'm working toward.
I'm going to put you on the spot here just a little bit, only because I know you. So I would say, you talk about mental game. I would say one of the things you do is you push yourself probably harder than just about anybody I know. How do you overcome that? Because you can push yourself to the point of feeling like you're not adequate. If you set your goals too high, I would think. Do you feel like you do that, or do you feel like you've balanced that in your life?
I feel like I used to struggle with that quite a bit.
Okay.
But I definitely feel like, learning to walk in the Spirit and learning to really tune in to hear the voice of God.
Okay, you can't say walk in the Spirit because I have too many listeners. So I try to get away from what we would dub as church terms. So explain to me, or my listeners, as you give me that look, explain to me walking in the Spirit. I mean, are you saying like I'm asking God what to do? Yeah, so
just continually, one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of my day, I like to read my devotional and really just set my mind, renew my mind. And I like to envision just being in the throne room with God and taking my spirit, soul, and body, and my soul and my body bowing down, and them bowing down before my spirit, and my spirit bowing down before the Lord, so that the first thing I'm able to do is really be in tune and listen when God is speaking, because He's constantly speaking. We're just not always in tune to hear what He's saying. So right. I try to clear my filters out and prepare myself in the beginning of the day for the things that He speaks. And it's been a process, but really learning who I am and being confident in that, I feel like has really changed the way that I view things and has caused me to be even more gracious with myself.
It's cool you said that. I've never even actually thought about visualizing going before God and separating my being as far as prayer time and stuff like that. It's really interesting. I think I'm going to have to take you up on that. It's funny. It's funny that we're even having these conversations. Two of those things we've never even discussed, and then I've never even heard you say that quote. So actually, that's really funny to me right now. Okay, so we're all called to share the gospel, is what Jesus says, go out, share the good news. I know that you're not I like to separate it. So you are not a Christian trainer. You are a trainer who's a Christian. There's difference.
Right.
How do you, not all your clients know that you love the Lord and your beliefs and stuff, but how are you able to share that with your clients, or how do you go about that without saying hey, you need Jesus, and you're shoving that down their throat? Because obviously a lot of people get that and it's such a turnoff. How are you able to do that with your clients?
So the most important thing is, loving people.
Yeah.
And, allowing other people to feel accepted and loved. And once people experience that, then people are open to you as a person. And, I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that bothers me in the church right now. You see it all the time, but, as Christians, we are called to love, and we're called to love the unlovable. We're called to love the people who don't do things the way we do. And we're also called to love each other. And I feel like one of the biggest epidemics in our church is Christians judging each other. Mm-hmm. And constantly, looking at each other and saying, well, they don't do this and they should be doing this. Well, one of the things that God has really checked me on and helped me to see from a different perspective is that not every person has the same conviction that another person has.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not talking about a sin issue. Sin is sin, and the Bible's clear on that. If you see someone out, having an affair on their husband or their wife, well, then they're in sin, and that, that's a different situation. But what I'm talking about is oh, that girl is wearing, her shirt is too tight. Well, maybe you have that conviction and that person doesn't.
Right.
And, it might bother you. Not that it's not okay that it bothers you, that's fine. But to judge that person and condemn them and to not love them the way Christ loves them then does become a sin. And so what we tend to do is to look through our own glasses, our own convictions, and project those off onto other people. And it causes us, I feel, like it causes us to stumble and not allow others to truly be loved and to truly be led into the fullness of who they're called to be.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. All I could picture was you talk about loving the unlovable, and I'm thinking about how people will judge. You brought up the thing about clothing, right? For women, I'm thinking of Jesus hanging out with prostitutes. Mm-hmm. So if Jesus was hanging out with prostitutes in the Old Testament, surely I doubt they dressed modestly.
Right.
So I'm just picturing like today, in today's terms, like if we were to go pick up prostitutes and bring them to church and hang out, I mean, I think for some people in church, like they'd fall over.
Yeah. They
wouldn't even know what to do with that. And it would almost be funny. It'd actually be hilarious. I would love to see that.
Yeah. And you know, when you really think about the irony of that, the sad thing is those are the people we need to be bringing to church.
Yeah, they're the ones that need it the most because obviously they have healing and things. What they don't need is judging. They need love, exactly like what you're talking about. So, and I'll ask again anyway, but you kind of brought it up already. But what's a personal daily habit that you start off with to really renew your mind?
So I definitely try to wake up first thing and just read my devotional and just get my mind right. But the other thing that I do, and you know this just from walking in on me, but I love to just turn the music on, and while I'm getting ready, usually that's my time where I'm either listening to praise and worship music, praying, or I have the Bible playing. That is just my time because usually the house is empty unless you come back in and there I am praying or whatever. But I just take the morning usually and just spend time to get my mind right, my week right.
I love it. Is there a book that you're reading right now a book that's impacted you recently?
Yeah, so I'm not a huge book reader. I do enjoy reading, but I feel like, we don't have a ton of time in our schedules right now for extra stuff. But I have read a couple of books this year. One is Spirit Wars by Kris Vallontton.
Yeah, Vallontton, he's awesome.
And that book, I would highly recommend anyone reading that. It is just a very good insight to the things that you deal with in the spiritual realm, the unseen things and how it works.
Right.
And then I'm also reading a book by Dutch Sheets, Becoming Who You Are. Mm-hmm. And that is a really good book for anyone, especially if you want to know more about who you are.
Yeah, you've read some quotes out of there I thought were absolutely phenomenal. So is there a resource or I had a guest actually bring up, this was funny recently, I asked him about a resource or a life hack. And he told me his life hack, which was the first out of all of them, was organizing the forks and spoons in the dishwasher before he put them in. And I thought that was hilarious. That was like the best ever for me. But is there like a resource or life hack that you would like to share with our listeners that has helped you?
So one thing that I do as a personal trainer is I keep my notebook with me, and my notebook helps me to keep track of everything I do in the day. And this is just a healthy, quick tip that I would give. A lot of times when we have to actually write down what we're eating and write down what we do during the day, and we look back at it, we think, oh man, I can't believe I actually ate that. Now I have to write it down. That's a really good tip to help people who want to get their nutrition on track and kind of track your daily physical activity. Did you actually work out? If you did, what did you do? And kind of look over that, and you can kind of get a good idea of, maybe why you have certain, things that you want to fix in your life.
Right. So what's cool now, though, your app, your online training program does that as well now.
It does.
Correct. Yeah, it keeps track of everything and keeps points and stuff, too.
Yeah, and we're going to be coming out with a 30-day Fuller Life and Fitness Journal here soon, where it will walk you through a lot of the journal exercises and things we do, as well as help you kind of keep track of that stuff also.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. Kasey, I want to ask you this. I ask every guest, no matter what, if you could go back to the younger you, what advice would you give yourself? Now, obviously, you can't change anything. You can't change what's going to happen. But what age would you go back to, and what advice would you give yourself?
I would probably go back about 12 or 13, because I had a pretty traumatic experience at that time in my life. When basically what happened was my mom had a mental breakdown at that age, and I was that age, and she went into the mental hospital. My parents were divorced when I was 7, and at that moment, it was like, what are we going to do? Well, we went to live with my dad So we had never lived with my dad before by ourselves, and they divorced when we were 7. And we moved across country, left, our school, everything, kind of uprooted and left. And he ended up getting married to the lady he had been dating for a long time, because he had, he was taking on all these kids and moving. And so there was 4 of us. And so I would probably just go back and tell myself, just to trust the Lord, that it would all work out. It would be okay. Because at that time, I went to church. I knew about God, but, I really was lost and just really felt like I was abandoned.
Yeah, that's hard. I think about that sometimes too. I think I just go back and be like, all right, life's going to suck for a couple more years, but it's going to be okay. Like, it's all going to work out. It's going to be rough, but God's going to get you through it, and you're going to look back and say, it was all worth it. So,
yeah.
And the funny thing is, even looking back, I wouldn't change a thing. Reason being is because if we were to change anything, it would change who we are.
Yeah.
And it's those experiences that mold us and allow us to have that experience with God through those moments. So
definitely.
Kasey, what is a piece of parting advice that you would like to give our listeners before we depart?
Probably some of the best advice I can give would come from the Word. There's a scripture in 2 Corinthians 2:9, and it says, "For this is why I wrote, that I might test you and know whether you are obedient in everything." And sometimes, I look back in my life and I realize that I was going through something and I didn't understand it at the time, but it was just a test. And the best thing you can do is just submit and just obey and just allow God to teach you whatever lesson He's trying to teach you, because in the end, you're going to keep going around that mountain if not.
Yeah, that ain't no joke. You talk about that's funny, man. I've had 3 of those this week going through stuff. I had 3 important people in my life basically come up to me and all tell me the same thing. None of them knew each other. None of them knew what they said. And all 3 of them told me that I needed to slow down and get some rest. So, which is funny.
And that's besides your wife.
Besides my wife, yeah. So that would have been, yeah, that doesn't count. You've been telling me that for like a year. And finally to the point where I just physically crashed. So, Kasey, I want to thank you so much for sharing your stories, things about obviously health and fitness, a little bit of your testimony. I want to ask you, for our listeners who want to get in shape, not just physically, but emotionally, and get all around what we call Fuller Fit, how do we find you, and how would we get a hold of you to get part of your program or to get help?
So you can go to my website, fullerlifeandfitness.com. You can also find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page you can like. You can send me messages on there or ask to join my online training group. It's Fuller Life and Fitness as well. And then you can also shoot me an email, Kasey, a K and a C, fit24@yahoo.com.
Awesome, man. I love it. So guys, check it out. Listeners, want to thank you so much for joining us today. You can jump on areyoureal.org. We'll have all the show notes. We'll have everything going to Kasey's site. She also, what she didn't mention, she does have a free 14-day trial for all of the recipes, fitness stuff, workouts. It's super cool. Guys and gals, thank you so much. And at the end of the day, just remember, be real, be authentic, be you. God bless.
That's all for this episode of Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You. Be sure to go to areyoureal.org for your free questionnaire to identify your gifts and talents and how you can use them to help people become leaders and catapult them into their destiny to help others become the leaders of tomorrow. We appreciate you spending your time with us and look forward to helping you reach out and revolutionize next time on Are You Real? Finding the Authentic You.